I'm a top 10 IBJJF ranked black belt, and I started jiu-jitsu when I was 22. I got my black belt when I was 28, and now I'm almost turning 30. So I spent almost my entire adult life trying to get better at jiu-jitsu and competing at the highest level as I could. Here are the lessons I've learned reaching and competing at black belt before 30. Number 1, stop catastrophizing injuries. One thing that injuries taught me was, first of all, how to work around them. It's not that I wasn't upset about being injured, but I found that an injury was almost like an excuse to work on a different part of your game. While I don't recommend this to everyone, depending on the severity of your injury, that was something that helped me stay on the mats and continue my progress pretty much 365 days a year, compared to needing taking breaks over and over. Because like little injuries and niggles and sprains here and there, I think are fairly normal as part of a combat sport, as long as they're not really serious and you're keeping yourself safe. The other thing is that I wanted to take full accountability of my injuries. If I was getting hurt, then I always wanted to think that it was my fault. And while there are partners that can go pretty hard, the thing that I can control is how to fix the injury and how to prevent it from happening again, right? So I was able to spend quite a bit of time learning how to strengthen different parts of my body, such as my knees and my lower back and my neck, and also learning how to train what sorts of positions put what sorts of stress on different parts of my body. And that honestly taught me a lot about jiu-jitsu and a lot about my body. I also was a lot smarter with my training partners and training different types of positions depending on how I was feeling. And this, I think, contributed to my longevity and also being able to be on the mats again almost 365 days a year, as opposed to like having to take time off because of getting any sorts of serious injuries. Number 2, train with people your size, and if you're a woman, train with women. If you only train with people who are bigger than you, you're most of the time, especially in the beginning of jiu-jitsu, you're just surviving and not improving. For sure, in the first year or so, you're probably just surviving and just getting your body used to all of these different positions. But eventually you're going to need rounds where you can develop offense, timing, and confidence. And that's not going to happen if every single round is a war for your life. Probably 90% of my training happens with people who are within 30 pounds of me or also women. And so I believe that was one of the things that contributed to my growth and also longevity on the mats. Number 3, don't put people on a pedestal, and especially don't put your opponents on a pedestal. As a competitor, I really struggled with making my opponents a lot bigger than they were, especially the ones who had really active social media profiles. When you really think about it, the people that you compete against are probably the people who are the most similar to you, right? Those are the people who trained so much that they thought, hey, I want to pay money to go have someone else do the same thing that I already pay to do in training, but to do it against me as hard as they can in a venue that I have to travel to and possibly get a hotel to. I want to put myself through the stress of making weight, waiting in the bullpen, and then fighting another unknown person, right? But that unknown person, that opponent who is standing across from you, you did the exact same thing as he did. So you just got to think about, regardless of what they put on their social media profile, in terms of life decisions, you guys have a pretty similar track. If I could go back to a lot of my earlier matches, especially in the earlier belts, especially blue and purple belt, where I thought everyone who was kind of good was really good just because I didn't have perspective, I wish I could have approached those matches with a healthier mindset. And so if I could go back, I wouldn't have mentally given away those matches before they even started. Number 4, know the difference between burnout and laziness. I love jiu-jitsu, and I know that about myself. I love to train, and I love thinking about jiu-jitsu. I love talking about jiu-jitsu. It's just what I want to do with my life, right? It's been almost 8 years of that, and nothing has changed at all. If anything, I feel like I love jiu-jitsu even more every day. And so when I don't want to train, I feel like that's an actual red flag, not me being lazy, right? Usually when I don't want to train, that means I'm overtrained and I really need to take at least that session off. On the flip side, I'm not super passionate about strength and conditioning and lifting. And so when I don't feel like lifting, that's usually a sign of lack of momentum or motivation, and I'll push through that kind of thing. I try not to do jiu-jitsu when I don't want to do jiu-jitsu because that's so rare, and that's almost always a sign that I'm on the verge of burning out. When I learned that difference, it changed everything. I used to spend quite a few days of the month feeling like I was run over by a train and feeling like, man, like, why don't I want to do jiu-jitsu? And it was because I was under recovered or overtrained. And so now I allow myself to take those days off, or take at least those sessions off, or, do a really light session, or just be teaching. And that has helped me stay in the game and stay focused and have just better quality training. Number 5, how you do anything is how you do everything. Last year, I expanded our kids program from 2 classes to 7 classes, and I taught those additional 5 classes. And I was really worried that was going to take away from my energy and ability to work on myself. But what actually happened was that I really buckled down on being present for those classes and being prepared. And because I had to be prepared for those classes, I had to be mentally clear. And because I had to be mentally clear, I also had like a good diet, a good sleep, and being able to rise to that challenge helped me get my life together. And so I was able to translate that also into training and then also into competition. That month that I expanded our kids program was actually the first time that I double golded in the IBJJF as a black belt in the Nogi division after moving up a weight class. And the week after, I also double golded in Indianapolis Open. And so that month really solidified to me that how you do anything is how you do everything. Number 6, urgency is good, limiting beliefs aren't. I really feel like I pushed myself to compete as much as possible, to improve as quickly as possible. And part of it was because I thought that when I turned 30, I was going to start declining. And of course, I just didn't have a lot of perspective. When I was working at my corporate job, I spoke to my boss on my birthday and I was like, hey, like, I think at that time I was 25. I was like, I'm 25. My amygdala is finally formed. And I'm really worried about turning 30. And at that time, my boss was, I think, past 30. And he told me something that really stuck with me. He was like, I've been in my 30s for a couple of years. And I would say a good summary of being in your 30s is that it's kind of like being in your 20s, but you're more experienced and you're richer. And I thought that was really funny and probably generally true. And so keeping that in mind, as every year passed and as I got closer to 30, I do feel like my jiu-jitsu has only gotten better. I've only gained more experience both on the mats and, like intersocially or whatever. And so while of course everyone pretty much wishes that they started sooner, I really believe and kind of have to believe that we all find jiu-jitsu at the time that our life is most ready to accept it into our lives, right? I do think about if I had started jiu-jitsu maybe in college, like 4 years earlier when I was 18, maybe I would be a lot better now. But I know that in college, I was a little bit depressed. I was really struggling. I'm not really sure if I started jiu-jitsu, I'd be able to stick with it. I'm not sure if I would have had a positive experience with it. I'm not sure if I would have met the right people that would have helped keep me in the sport. Whereas when I started jiu-jitsu when I was 22, the moment I walked in the door, I knew that it was something that I was going to do for the rest of my life. Timing is something that we don't always control. And so while we want to have a little bit of urgency to like push ourselves, it's not necessarily productive to have a limiting belief that, after a certain amount of time, I need to be here, right? Because we just don't have control of that time. Number 7, your losses are building your wins. I stopped seeing losses as failures and started seeing them as prerequisites, right? If I lost, it just means that I wasn't ready yet. If I won, it meant that I had built the skills to be able to win. So either way, you're moving forward. It's very easy for any competitor to start defining themselves by whether they win or lose at every tournament. I was competing pretty much at least once a month for the past 3 years. And so if I let every loss or every win define me, then I simply would not be able to move forward. If I lost, the best thing I could always do with that experience was to learn from it and then use it in the next month. Just looking at losses as a building block for your eventual win, that was a really good perspective for me to adopt in the past year or so.